everyone, Sydney here. So today I'm going to be showing you how I made the Red Queen of Hearts costume from Alice in Wonderland. We recently went to Comic-Con and our cousin Emily actually wore this costume while we were there. So without further ado, let's get into this tutorial. The pattern I used to make the base of this dress is Simplicity 1728. The first step to making the skirt was to cut out 4 side panels and 1 skirt front panel. To make the hearts on the front of the dress, I used a cookie cutter to make an outline of a heart on craft foam. Then I cut it out and stacked some squares of foam on the back for a handle of the stamp. Making sure to use cardboard to protect the table, I stamped the hearts on a test piece of fabric before doing this on the skirt. I used acrylic paint to make the hearts, so this costume cannot be washed. Once the black paint had dried, I made smaller heart stamps and went over the black ones with gold paint. I then attached the skirt pieces according to the instructions. The next step was to gather almost all the way around the top of the skirt, but not the front panel. I pinned the bottom of the dress to where I wanted to hem it. I made it a little longer in the back to get a mini train at the back of the dress. Then I hemmed it up. I got this decorative fishnet on Amazon for only a few dollars. To make it golden, we watered down some gold paint in a paper bowl, and then covered the net in the paint, spread it out on cardboard, and sprayed with gold glitter paint to let it dry. The net I bought was 4 by 12 feet. I cut it in half and used all of it. To make it easier to attach to the dress, I tied the 2 pieces of net together with some string. Then I pinned the netting along the top of the skirt, gathering the knots so it all fit. I also left a space in the net for the zipper. I did not put the net over the front of the skirt where the hearts are painted. After that, I sewed on the gold netting along the waist of the skirt. I got a roll of tulle that was 6 inches by 100 yards. I cut pieces of the tulle that were the length of the skirt and sewed the 5 of them together at a time, making little puffs. This made it much easier to manage. Then I sewed the puffs of tulle around the top of the skirt over top the gold net. Once I was done with that, I had Kendall try on the dress. Thankfully, Kendall and Emily are the same size. My mom helped me arrange the tulle and play with it until we decided to try something different. I didn't like how you couldn't see the net very much, so we cut 2 vertical strips in the net and wove the tulle through the net until it looked the way I liked. The last step for the skirt was to sew on the waistband. To make the top, I followed the instructions on my pattern. I cut out the bodice pieces and sewed them together. To make the little flaps on the bottom of the bodice, I cut out 4 pieces of fabric shaped like this. Then I folded them in half and sewed them up along the long edge. Then I put together the bodice lining. It's the same exact steps as making the bodice, but before you sew it up, you apply a light interfacing to the fabric. Then I attach the boning to the inside seams of the lining. To do this, you cut the boning the same size you need, then remove the plastic from the fabric and sew the fabric lining onto the costume. Make sure to round the edges of the plastic before putting it into the costume so it doesn't rip the fabric. Then I applied the Velcro to the inside of the lining. This is what will attach the collar to the costume. Next, sew the lining and the bodice shell together, good side to good side across the top. Then I attached the zipper. After attaching the little flaps at the bottom of the top, I added gold ribbon across the front and put thin red ribbon on top of that. I used hot glue to attach it because that was the easiest. To make the sleeves, I used a cap sleeve pattern from a different pattern set, but you could easily draw this or freehand it. I added a small gather across the top of the curved part of the sleeve. I also used a different pattern piece for the netting part of the sleeve. The bands across the arm were made from strips of fabric sewn together and stacked up. After the glue dried, I sewed them onto the netting. The gold gauntlets were 9 inches by the wrist, 12 inches by the elbow, and 12.5 inches long. Sew them up and leave room for the elastic on the larger end. Use a safety pin to feed the elastic through one end, then sew the elastic together, turn it inside out, and hem it up. To make the collar, the first step was cutting out 1 piece of lace and 1 piece of organza. Then pin them together and sew them all the way around. Then I took a 3rd piece of the organza for the collar and pinned it to the lace side of the collar. I sewed along the 2 short sides and the long outer edge, leaving the center edge open. To make the collar base, I cut out 2 pieces of my organza and applied a light interfacing to 1 piece. I then pinned them together good side to good side and sewed them up on the outer edge. I used thread to mark where I needed to stitch on the vertical lines of my collar. This stitching is to hold the wire in place later. I cut 1 long piece of my wire that stretched from one end of the collar to the other and strung it along the very top edge of it. I then took shorter pieces of wire and folded them in half, squishing them with pliers to make them flat. I held them up to my stitching where they needed to go, and then used a seam ripper to make sure that they could go all the way up to the top. Then I put one end of each prong in between the layers of fabric. I then put a pin at the bottom where the wire ended so I didn't hit it with the sewing machine. Then I sewed the collar base onto the collar. This stitched up the rest of the collar so that the metal prongs wouldn't fall out. I decided to just use hot glue to secure the collar base to the rest of the collar. Following the lines of my pattern, I attached the sticky Velcro pieces where they needed to go. This will attach the collar to the costume. To complete the look, I glued some black ribbon onto the collar. So here's some pictures of my sister wearing this costume. I think it looks really cool. Alright, and that is it for this costume. Thanks for watching, and I hope you enjoyed this video. You can click the links at the end of this video or the links in the description box down below to see how you can do the hair and makeup for this costume or to see us go to Comic-Con. Thanks for watching. Bye!